Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Indie Hour. It is episode 47 as we creep up on 50 episodes, and we're probably in the 70s now for the number of games we've actually reviewed, because we used to do double episodes in the beginning of this. I would pair two games together, and that immediately got out of hand because we were just like, there's so much, we're getting bombarded. And this is a show that's selected by the GMG patrons, where we check out indie games and do a whole lot of sort of like coverage of things we think deserve more attention. Now, the GMG patrons, of course, are huge fans of small print, boutique, and small press product, and so the mission for GMG is to put that in front of as many people as possible. So we do this weekly. Now, if you're watching this live on YouTube, sort of like free and for the public, this was recorded a week earlier, and we are currently usually that Wednesday in the process of voting on and then picking a new game to do a review. We do it live. It's a bit of like before and after. We get to hang out and chat. So I usually do like about a half hour of extra content in the pre and the post, see behind the scenes of GMG, what's being worked on. And then just some, like, we can do a Q&A when it's all over for people to check out the games. This week's game is Cazador. Cazadore? I think it's Cazador. I forgot to do the Google, how do I pronounce before this got started? And that was a problem. So this is a Monster Hunter game. And the idea here is that you are tracking down mythic beasts. I believe the Cazador was that in maybe ancient Roman times, was the beast hunters who would get the beasts for the Colosseum for the gladiators to fight. And so the idea here is that this is a game where you are taking on mythical beasts, and it's a solo and cooperative 1 to 4 player miniatures agnostic kind of beat 'em up game. So if you've ever played other games, like for instance, let's say Monster Hunter, the video game, Hametsu we recently covered, which is a Blackside Studio indie game set in feudal Japan with mythical monsters, or Rangers of Shadowdeep, where there's very often like a big monster boss. This is that type of a game. It is available here on itch for a pay what you want or free. I recommend giving Jose $5, and it's written by Jose Espinoza from Matachin Games, and this is a fully incomplete game in 2 parts. So you'll notice there's a red rulebook and a rulebook, blue rulebook here. He's kind of wisely divided the game into like its core mechanics. So the hunter is you making your party and like how the core rules for like scenarios and stuff work. And then the adversary section is how do I set up the bad guys, the story of the game, and like go on my hunt. This would be very fun to like reskin to. I thought about doing this for Supernatural and having like a bunch of like himbos go out and hunt like, you know, Sasquatches and stuff like that in the woods, or even the X-Files and have you know, a Mulder and Scully go out and hunt people. You could do this a whole bunch of different ways. If you wanted a fluke man to be your bad guy, you could reskin this into different various eras, but the idea here is that it's in a mythical age, you know, swords and sorcery and that kind of stuff. So you can find it here on itch. If you want to check it out, you can download it. And there's also some other handy stuff here. There's, of course, a reference sheet for playing the game. It has like the AI system and stuff on it. And then on top of that, the warband sheet for creating your Cazadors. They have a personal clock as well for like a countdown, and then the adversary, which is the big monster, because it can have different hit locations, because they can be differently shaped, right? Like a weird centaur might have, you know, hindquarters, and then the body of a man, arms, and a head. And they've all got their own personal clocks and stuff as well for the minions. So you're fighting little guys and big guys. It's a bit reminiscent of even Mike's Perilous Tales, where there was always like minion creatures, and then a big creature would like show up towards the end, like a vampire or something like that, to fight. And you've got like, you know, a ton of different options here. There's 4 in the core rules. So without any further ado, let's dive in and check out the core mechanics of the game. All right, so the hunter. It's a nice, concise core rulebook. Lots of good like attributions and stuff here too. He does Appendix N, which is one of my favorite things. The original D&D, famously, Appendix N is the section of the book where they talk about like what they were reading when they came up with this stuff. And I think Appendix N is a really fun way to get to know your game designer, because it kind of lets you know what they've been marinating in. There's a great observation about like creativity, and one of them is that the people that wrote The Simpsons, the original like 10 seasons of The Simpsons that are so great, marinated in all kinds of weird pop culture, TV, and literature and stuff from like the 50s and through like the 70s and 80s. And the reason that The Simpsons doesn't feel like The Simpsons anymore is that, you know, the next 20 seasons are being written by people who marinated in The Simpsons, right? So it starts to eat itself and like reiterate. So I love when a designer puts in kind of like their inspirations and things that they like, because you can find stuff in common with them. And even like the fonts. and the Creative Commons stuff that got used in here. So let's talk about the table of contents. Again, this is a nice, concise rulebook. It runs, I think, 54 pages total, including Appendix N, and starts with core mechanics and then works down. Because remember, this is about like, if I was using the sort of like idea of this as being the engine of the car, you can build whatever you want around it. This is the motive power of the game. This is how the stuff works, how you move around and touch stuff. The what you move around and touch, and the where and like the how is in the second appendix, which is the adversary part. All right, so the game Cazadores is the narrative-focused miniature game that can be played solo or cooperatively with up to 4 players. So it's 1 to 4 minis, so 4 if you're playing solo, and then 1 each potentially if you're playing co-op. Each player plays a Cazador, a brave and formidable hunter, hell-bent on defeating fearsome mythical beasts, uncanny horrors, and other terrifying adversaries. They're joined by a rare few companions willing to follow them into the wilderness, through the desert, across the mountains, and into the lairs of monstrous things and the darkness between those places. And it's a narrative game. When you play Cazadores, the author urges you to act as best fits your character, that eke out an optimal outcome, resolve ambiguous situations in a way that most dramatically be satisfying. The rules are a framework, so change them if you need to. And then play to find out what happens rather than play to win. I love this line. This was something that I wrote about in Last Days in the Forward about Ever Afters. Playing to find out what the emergent story is my like most satisfying way of doing almost any miniature game. It's the reason why I love playing Infinity, because you can play the same game over and over again and get a different result. It's why I love playing Kill Team, because the camera is so dialed in and close on things. And it's one of the reasons why I loved even more ponderous games like Warhammer Quest 95, where going back to town after the dungeon adventure is over is a story in and of itself. I think more happened in the Gorka Morka campaign I played with Jay back at town, at Mechtown, than happened in our games. In our games, Jay was just like driving vehicles off ramps and my guys were, dying. But back in town, my boss took such a beating that like other guys took over the gang and he was just a regular dude by the end of the game. So I love that line. I think that is a great, if you find yourself dissatisfied by playing games, think about that instead. If you can change your mindset to that, I think you'll probably have a really good time. All right, the world. The world of Cazadores is purposefully a bundle of vague ideas rather than a detailed setting. It's a world that never was, inspired by Greek myths and cautionary children's tales. So, yeah, don't expect a cohesive story. Every one of the encounters in the Adversary book is its own kind of bottle episode of TV. It's a little Hansel and Gretel, or, oh God, what was that Van Helsing movie that had Wolverine in it, that had Hugh Jackman in it? It's kind of that, where it's like a mash together of stuff. It does need to be cohesive. The hunt is the only thing that's important. The hunt will be ever present. It's a tradition spanning centuries that's the impetus for the game. It is not honored or glorified. It is often viewed as necessary, if despicable. Your game might take place during the Bronze Age, the Medieval Age, or even like Victorian England or any other time. The hunt will ever be present. The idea is that no matter where you are, there's always people hunting monsters. Cazadors, the master of the hunt, are not always considered heroes, though they are eminent. So again, this could be like a Witcher type. Their ranks are made of zealous and honor-bound, the torchbearers of familial tradition and those desperate souls with no other means to survive the world. It's funny because if you've ever watched, God, what was it called? It was The Doom That Came to Gotham, which is a Batman Elseworlds story about like a Cthulhu Batman, basically. Oliver Queen, Oliver Quinn, Ollie, the Green Arrow. He's basically this guy. He's a hunter, and he's hellbent on hunting down a monster. And I think Batman ends up being the monster actually. And then the adversaries, creatures of legend and with incredible power. They're not all malevolent. They're sometimes the remnants of aged, eclipsed by the rise of humanity, and sometimes the vanguards of a new era that will eventually erase our kind from history. So you can do Cthulhu monsters too if you want. This would be a good one actually to do some eldritch horrors in. All right, let's get into the stuff. All right, so you got the idea here. This is what we're playing for. Let's talk about the things you need. So two by two playing areas, 24 inches by 24 inches, and 1 to 4 miles per side for your heroes. Some terrain to bring the area of life, so like whatever setting you want to be in. Some D10s, 10 D10s of one color and 2 of a different color, and this is important. A standard 52 card deck, which is the Adversary deck. So again, you think the event deck maybe in Rangers of Shadowdeep. Tape measure, ruler in inches, some condition tokens, and there is printable tokens. I think I already showed them to you. And then the paper, your model sheets, all that stuff that you already saw too. Models and scale. Models are the miniatures. They're usually using 28 or 32 mil in mind, but use what you want. You should have heroic characters for your Cazadores, and then your foes would be minions, and then finally the Adversary itself. And hostile and friendly models clarify the in-game effects, which is like basically, are you a good guy or a bad guy? Can I attack you or not? Measuring. Same edge throughout the move. Use the closest point between two models to do it, and you can choose to measure distances at any point. Line of sight is going to be 360 around your imaginary cylinder, and you're using like a cylinder template, like an infinity, to do your actual like measuring from. If you draw a straight line for any part of your cylinder, any other part of blocking, without blocking trainer hostile models, line of sight, it's always reciprocal. So if you can see somebody, they can see you too. And then some basic rules for like being placed, pushed, or overlapping. Think War Machine Mark III for the mechanics of that. All right, checks. So targets and difficulty thresholds. This is a little bit like a Psalm core game, right? Forbidden Psalm, where you're going to have a target number. In this case, it's called difficulty threshold. So DT. You get the DTs. You can feel like ants are crawling on your skin. And you're trying to hit that target. So whenever you roll, you're trying to hit that dice threshold, like a 5, you need a 5 or better. So the success is beyond the value rolled in the difficulty die. The DT might be a fixed value, like 5, or it might refer to the value of one of the target's ratings. So like your defense. So if one of your stats is going to be the DT. So for example, a model attempts a shooting attack against a target. The game simulates the target's attempt to protect itself by using its defense as its DT. So like a 6. That means that any die that equals or greater than a 6 is considered a success. And then you get crits and abilities. Any die that's a 10 is a critical. Criticals can activate abilities, so you might have critical effects on your Cazador. And then each critical can only be used to activate one ability, and each ability can only be activated once per turn. However, roll has multiple crits, you can buy multiple. So like, let's say you roll multiple dice and get multiple 10s, then you could activate more than one and have them layered. The effect of an ability always occurs before the rest of the action resolved, and only if the check is a success. Otherwise, the criticals cannot take effect. And then advantage and disadvantage is you roll them additionally, and then either discard or keep. If model has advantage, roll 2 difficulty dice for the skill check and discard the highest result of the 2 difficulty dice when determining successes. If model has disadvantage, roll 2 and discard the lowest result. Advantage and disadvantage cancel each other out at 1 to 1. Wait. That advantage and disadvantage description didn't make any sense because previously it said roll higher than. The dice rolled for a check must equal or exceed to be considered a success beyond the value rolled in the difficulty die. So if you had a 5, then a 6 are at a minimum to be considered a success. So then why would advantage make you discard the highest dice? If a model has advantage, roll 2 difficulty dice for the relevant skill check and discard the highest result. No, that would be the disadvantage. I think he's just described that backwards. Because otherwise that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then advantage and disadvantage discard, like, cancel each other out. So yeah, make note there, guys. That's just backwards in the rules, it looks like. Other rolls. Sometimes the game requires you to roll a D5, D10, D2, whatever. Just have the dice roll to get the thing you want. And then you can use the top of a D10 for scatter dice. Pretty standard stuff. And then actions, ticks, and clocks. So action cost. Cazadors are driven by the boundless bravery and unshakable resolve, while the adversary and its minions possess unnatural strength and fearsome power. Neither are limited to their stamina or endurance during the hunt. Instead, all actions take precious time, represented as ticks. So the clock is basically how many seconds it takes you to do something. During a model's turn, when it uses an action, the model must first pay the action ticks, advancing the personal clock by that amount. Once it has carried out its actions, the model will not be able to take another turn until the round clock matches their personal clock again. So basically, you can act more than once per turn, and whenever you do an action, you do a bunch of ticks to move forward. This actually reminds me a little bit of Round of Fire, which we also covered on the Indie Hour, where you have a timing clock that you move around basically while you do actions. And then ending around the round clock only advances once all eligible models take a turn during a tick. Once it reaches a tick 10, it would advance until the round ends. So basically, you have 10 ticks in every round, 10 actions, and certain actions take more time than others. Unlike the round clock, personal clocks do not reset. Instead, they loop. If Maul's personal clock is at tick 9 and takes an action of 3 ticks, then its personal clock is first advanced to 10 and then to 1, and finally settles at tick 2. So basically, you loop around your clock, unlike the round. Before the game starts, the player should agree on what type to assign to each piece of terrain. So you can have different types of terrain, like open, difficult, and then like dangerous. They can do different things and require checks to move through them. And then sometimes there will be a border and an exit. And this allows them to flee from the fight and be removed from the place. So you could have like a boat that you all move on to. You have like an archway that you can run through into the woods, or like just an opening into a path. Of course, for cover, and then your companions. The players are either Cazadors, the fearless and exceptional hunters, or companions. So you get to be a Scooby and a Shaggy as opposed to a Fred. And you've all got these same stats. So speed, it's how many inches you can move in one action. Your prowess, which is your athletics and melee skill. Your sharpness, which is your shooting and stealth skill. Your wits, which is your hunting and lore skill. And your resolve, which is your stamina, bravery, and other intangible things that give you your fortitude and leadership skills. And then you have additional skills. They represent your expertise in doing things. So they're all tied usually to an attribute. So like if you have a skill check for something like melee, you'd use prowess. So like athletics and melee are both prowess skills. Shooting and stealth are sharpness skills. So it's just kind of nested into that stat. It means you don't have to have multiple stats for multiple things. Use a single one. So if you think of prowess, sharpness, wits, and resolve as like speed, prowess, sharpness, wits, and resolve as being like your D&D core stats, you know what I mean? And then everything else is a skill on top of that. That probably is the thing that makes the most sense. When making checks, Cazadors roll d10s equal to the sum of the paired skill and attributes ratings, but companions and foes rely only on their attributes. So, for instance, when you make a check, if you had like a 2 for your prowess and you're making a melee attack, you'd roll 2 dice. If you had advantage, you'd roll 3 and discard the lowest. It said the highest, and that's why I keep coming back to that being wrong. And then finally, wounds. It's how much damage you can take before you fall down. Should a model's wounds be reduced to 0, they're dead and irrevocably lost to the horrors of the hunt. And then you also have your defense and your armor. So melee's defense is the sum of your prowess and armor, and then shooting defense is the sum of your sharpness and armor. So think of like your dexterity and your constitution. And then finally, we have our foes. The foes opposing the Cazadores will be defined in less detail because they don't need that many skills. It's just easier that way. So they have their speed, attack, range, terror. It's how scary they are. Their defense and their wounds. So you define defense against everything. There's no like granular defense. Wounds is just how much damage they can take, how scary they are, and their ability to clear the conditions basically is their terror check. And then your range. If you have access to shooting attacks, you'll have one. Finally, you have your foes, types, and decision trees. You can have aggressive, defensive, and sentry. And I really like this. A lot of these solo and co-op like monster or adventure games, they have what I'd call magnetic adversaries. It's basically you're a magnet and stuff is always kind of pouring towards you. And you can kite bad guys. You can kind of game the system with a simple way like that. Having a variety of different stances and different models just complexifies it enough that you have to consider more than one thing at a time. I just think it's a good way to play. So aggressive, they're going to magnet towards you. Defensive, models that avoid close combat, usually focus on range combat. And then sentries, models that don't focus on engaging you in combat, but instead patrol objectives or portions near the adversary. So they're like bodyguards, or they might, be watching a button that you have to push. And they have to determine the aggro. Whether there's multiple possible targets for foes' actions, you have to target aggro, according to the foe type. So aggressive models will go after a hostile model within 10 line of sight with the most wounds. A defensive will go after 10 line of sight with least wounds. And a sentry, the close hostile model within 10 line of sight. And then you have your decision trees for like what they're going to try and do. Can they do these things in this order? And then it's yes, no's. They do the first thing they can actually accomplish. And then finally, the adversary deck. Adversaries are the major foes of any hunt. In turn, they are much more unpredictable and dangerous. So this is your big boss. Simulate this. They use a 52-card deck of playing cards formed into 2 different piles. First, you have hit locations, the 2 10s, and then actions, which is the ace and face cards. Each adversary has detailed entries to the adversary deck and describes specific hit locations and actions tailored to fit their nature and particular qualities. And these are in the adversary books. We'll talk about those right now. So let's quickly change that up to this guy. All right. and have a look at an adversary, because that'll make the adversary deck stuff make more sense. So here's an example of an adversary. We have their attributes, their types, and decision tree. So they have similar attributes to the minions. So speed, attack, range, terror, defense, and wounds. And then the decision tree stuff is reprinted here as well. And finally, the adversary deck. So their actions. During the adversary's turn, the players flip over and reveal one card from the pile of actions. The specific card revealed is interpreted in terms of the suit and value. So the suit determines the foe type that the adversary will use this turn. So they can switch to different types, right? And that's maybe my favorite part of this game so far, is that the brain of the adversary, the big bad, is unpredictable, right? They might start sentrying, they might move away from you, they might start like hanging back and shooting, they might charge towards you and fight. You can't just kite the bad guy. He will change his mind sometimes and start doing different things. So for instance, an example action would be Ace, Sweeping Smash, +2 attack and +1 range. All hostile models within range suffer a melee attack. Models hit or pushed away 2. So you do like a crazy like swipe, and these things can happen at random. Exhausting the deck. Whenever the hit location or action piles of them are exhausted, the player should simply take the discard piles without shuffling, turn them over to new hit location action piles. And this allows you to predict the actions to some degree. They'll only go through the pattern once, and then you get to change it up again. We've got all kinds of different attacks, so things like terror attacks. Foes can also use their innate fierceness to make attacks using their terror rating. These attacks are usually reserved for the adversary with multiple models and impose the terrified condition, however they rarely inflict wounds. So it could be things like just moving, or like a focus or a hide. And then we have the actual adversaries. So we'll come to these in a minute, but we're going to jump back to the core book there, but I wanted to kind of show off what that stuff looked like. All right, so now we know what the adversary deck does. Playing the game. All right, choose an adversary. Each game encompasses a hunt for a dangerous and terrifying foe, the adversary. Therefore, the first time you're setting up the game, the player selects an adversary. They're the target for the hunt. You can choose any books, any ones in the adversary, or develop your own based on the guidelines provided here. In campaign play, the adversary for a hunt might be determined by events in a previous game, or evolve the story by basically playing multiple games in a row. So you could have, the first adversary be a werewolf, and you realize that he's a minion of a giant vampire. Then you have to try and hunt down the vampire, blah, blah, and like chain them together. And then gather the pack. A pack is always composed of 2 to 4 models with 1 Cazador per player. The rest of the models in the pack are companions. So if you have 4 players, you get 1 Cazador per player and no companions. If you get 2 players, they get 1 Cazador and 1 companion. And the single player game, you get 1 and up to 1 to 3, depending on how big they are. Put down the play area. You set up objectives based on what the scenario is. Put your foes down. Mark the clocks. You start at 10. I might get a big D10 for this. I think that'd be handy to have like a big giant D10. Like I have a bunch of like wheels I could use too, but like just turning a big dice I think would be handy. And then embark on the hunt. After previous steps are completed, the hunt begins and the game is played over a number of rounds divided into ticks. And then take up to 10 ticks worth of actions. And you carry your turns, advance the round clock and the round, and you start over again. But your ticks will be wherever they are on the round. So remember, the player characters, like if they spend a long time doing something right at the end of a round, they'll still be doing it when the round starts, and they have to get to the right tick to keep going. And then ending the round. If the round clock would advance beyond tick 10 instead of set to tick 1, conditions and objectives are the most common source of effects that are resolved at the end of the round, so sometimes they go away. And ending the hunt. Either all pack models or all full models are dead, and then it's over. The pack flees. If they've all fled, then that's over. And then if there's a special objective that you have to do, then that will also end it. And then we execute our turns. All models may take 1 free move action and 1 more action on their turn in any order they choose. The model declares their first action advancing their personal clock by the action's tick cost, unless it's the first free move action of the turn. For foe, so you can move twice, but it costs you for the second one. And then for foes, when resolving a decision tree that would require the foe to move, they always use their free move first, reserving the second action for their attack. Unless they can't do it, they have to move it again secondly. So basically, like they're always going to try and execute either go to cover if they're like a defensive one, or attack you if they're an adversary that's aggressive, and then they'll use the other one to determine if they can actually perform their second action or not. After executing their second action, the model ends their turn, and effects occur at the end of the turn are resolved. So like someone's on fire, has to stand up, or got knocked down. And we got our action types: movement, combat, and special. So you get your free move. Otherwise, I believe it costs you 1. If model chooses not to use the move action, treat as if it executed a move action with a move of 0. Foes can exchange their free action for the recover action, but the player's models cannot see foes and recover action. So you can like clear conditions and stuff on the foes, but you're not allowed to as a Cazador. And if a model forgoes taking an action during the turn, they're treated as doing pass action, and the personal clock goes up by 1. All right. So cover ground costs you 3 ticks. The model attempts the action, making an athletics check. So this is making a second move, basically. It's like a run action. If successful, the model can move up their speed value +1 for each success that they roll. On a failure, they can't move. And then remember, the model pays an action tick cost prior to attempting the irrelevant check, and regardless of its outcome. So you always pay the ticks. And then move is just going to be 2 ticks, make a basic move speed. Jumping and leaping, climbing and falling has rules too. And then combat actions, 3 ticks to attack, 4 to cast a spell, 2 to defend, 2 to focus, which is allowing you to get advantage on your next attack action, or subtract up to 2 from the hit location of all wounds dealt during the next attack. So you can focus if someone attacks you to like defend yourself as well. You can hide, you can parry, you can reload your weapon for 1 tick, spot weaknesses. You can attempt a hunt check with a damage a difficulty threshold equal to the target's defense rating. If successful, this model and the friendly models get advantage on attacks against it for the rest of the round. So you can try and like call it like aim for the head or aim for the belly. I like that as an action because that happens in movies where they're fighting monsters all the time, right? The first half is they're getting their ass kicked by the monster, then someone figures out what its weakness is, and then you jump in and figure out what it was. And then everybody gets advantage because they're all getting to do it. I think they did that in the D&D movie with the Displacer Beast at some point. And then switch around your gear if you have different gear stuff. And then special things like aid, flee, pass. You can recover, make a fortitude check, and then clear a condition. Foes can using their terror rating instead of fortitude. And then use gear, and this can have different things, but usually it's 3 ticks. And there's the action summary, so you get some table space of all the things you can do. The attack action is pretty simple. A model attacks by taking the attack action against a hostile within range and line of sight. The attack has a difficulty of a shooting check if you're using the defense as a target, and then it would be their melee defense if it's melee defense. Some abilities, basically, if you get a natural 10, you might get it. So like weapons might have like a piercing ability, or it might poison somebody. And then you can carry up to 3 weapons into a hunt, but only the relative one is eligible attacks. You have to actually switch your weapons around, like you have to draw a sword. So you might have like the hard iron sword for fighting like fairies, and then have like a silver weapon for fighting werewolves or something like that. And you have to switch in between them. Rules for dual wielding, how much ammo something carries, where you have to reload, and then all the combat situations like being terrorized by the bad guy. And then conditions you can have like be bleeding, on fire, poisoned, or knocked down. All right, so now we got to look at how do you make your group. So you start off with your Cazador. So he's got a prowess, a sharpness, a wit, and a resolve of 3. So he's rolling 3 dice in most tests. 12 wounds, and he moves 4 inches per action, which would mean an 8-inch total move if you manage to move twice. And then you start with an attribute rating as outlined below, and a 0 in every skill, no rituals, and 1 weapon of your choice, and light armor. Each player can then spend up to 10 renown to increase their attributes or skills, obtain weapons, armor, and special gear, and recruit companions. So the blank template of a guy basically is those starting attributes, and then you can buy them additional things from this table, right? So you can increase your attributes up to 3 points, and then each has a maximum of 7, so you can buy extra dice to roll. Your speed and wounds go up to 3 points, max at 8 speed and 20 for your wounds. And your skills up to 5, each max of 3. Rituals up to 2, max of 3. And then you can buy weapons and gear up to 2 points. It's 3 for weapons, 1 armor, 2 special. And then your companions up to 2 points to get 5 enlisted in maximum. And your companions all have a class, like a brigand, a chevalier, a duelist. It's very Frostgrave here, right? You're buying basically for a set of skills. And then it's how much renown does it cost to get them. You have 10, remember, to spend. So to get a brigand costs you a renown. And you have to balance having extra guys with increasing your stats as well. Get a hound or a rogue, a stalker, a strider, a vicar. So you have a priest or a vigilant. It's like a guard. And you can buy gear. Also costs renown. It's like a ball and chain, a great weapon like a maul. It costs you 1 extra tick to attack, but it does more damage, right? It has a power rating of 1. Hand weapon, right? It's a basic one, just hand weapon, which you already get for free, but you have another one. And then dual wield. A serrated blade, which can cause bleeding on a crit. Whips and torches, like all of your Solomon Kane, kind of gear that you want to have. Bows and crossbows, pistols, knives, a book of rituals, a religious symbol, and then different kinds of armor, which will all add to your rating for your defense, right? Then we got some monster running stuff like a firebomb, burning pitch, crystalline powder, a lacerating trap, Elysian incense, a poison urn, a poison vial, smoke canister, and a strangling snare. And then over the centuries, the hunt has yielded a harvest of dark secrets. So you can cast rituals. So you can actually learn rituals as well, but they cost you to buy. So if you know, like Cosmic Rift, place 2 areas 2 inches. 2 area 2 within 10 inches of the model. So 2 like 2-inch zones. Any model that enters one of these areas is immediately placed within one of the others. So you get the orange and blue portals. You get the portal gun from Portal. It costs you 3, but the Cosmic Rift is like my favorite one. I would be pushing dudes through it. I would be buying pushing weapons and then dragging and pushing people through the Cosmic Rift so I could shoot them. And there's a variety of different rituals you can get, right? So lots of magic you can do. So you can have a magic witcher if you want as well. And we have our narrative rules. So these are the objectives. They introduce an additional goal for the pack to accomplish beyond defeating the adversary. And this is a thing that you can add to your hunts, basically. And then also have results from too. So assassinating the vessel, kill the human vessel model linked to the adversary. So there could be a vampire thrall, right? Or some type of weirdo cultist that's attached to something. Banish to the well. You got to push him back. Place a cosmic well area 2 from the center of the play area with a scatter roll. At the end of each round, all foes will recover D3 wounds if the cosmic well has not been banished. So basically, the evil magic is pouring through, and you got to close it. Capture the beast. Escape an ambush from the beast. Kill everything. Exterminate the foes. Forge the seal. They must apply warding tail to 3 warding points by succeeding a cast ritual while within one of the warding points. You have to basically lock the guy back up. You got to gozer him back into Gozer Town. Burn down its habitat, right? Give it nowhere to live. So vampire-wise, you could be destroying the dirt, all the dirt that the vampire has. Recover the artifacts. Retrieve the icon. Save the prisoner. So a bunch of different extra stories. And then Appendix N. So some things I already noted here, right? Perilous Tales, World of Warcraft, The Dolorous Stroke, Rangers by Joe, Hunt for the First Blood by Agus Games, and Sengoku Monster Hunter. Bloodborne, the Berserk manga, the Monster Hunter series, Brother of the Wolf. Brother of the Wolf's another really good one. The first theatrical movie I think ever shot in digital, which is really interesting. It was one of the first 1080p DVDs I ever owned, which I watched on my Sony Trinitron, which weighed up to 300 pounds. Yeah, that TV is a nightmare. And then extra stuff that's happened in the changelog, and that's the core rules. So let's have a quick look again at the adversary stuff so you can see the example of what kind of adversaries are in here already. So here's a cursed construct. I love this because this is very Oculus. You can have a a weirdo monster. I don't know, chest of drawers, but you could bed knobs and broomsticks it. Shifting and whispering plates of sleek alloy, a mockery of a human face, unfocused, unwavering, unfathomable. It's Pontius Glaw. They're making a Pontius Glaw miniature right now, actually. Necromunda's getting one, which I'm really fucking excited about. It's very cool. And he's got special hit locations. All right, so on a 10, 5 wounds, diffraction, all models within 10, so for a rating of 8. Shooting attack, on success, impose the poison condition, so things can happen when you hit people. Arsenal, you hit him in that. 5 wounds, corrupted at disadvantage to attacks. He gets messed up in his weapon systems. His ligaments get hit, he's -2 speed. His tissues are torn, he's -1 defense. His armature is broken, he gets -1 defense because it's cracked. The Constant Emperor's Praetorians. So this is Draugr. A creature wreathed in light. Just a weird bunch of... It's like a biblical angel. A bunch of weird eyes and feathery wings. A neonate worm. A monstrous and writhing shape of muscle bound in a lustrous carapace. Oh, it's a graboid. Perfect. The wandering son of the mountain, pale, emaciated, and long-limbed, hunched over the waist and primarily shell protecting from its skin. The wandering son carries an oak club. It's a troll from the movie Troll. And then we've got the adversary tables for each of these as well. It's like a nice one sheet that you can print off. I do like that this is separate, so you can just keep this to one side and have it as a reference. And more of these to come in the changelog. So there it is, Cazadores. This feels like a great weekend game for people that want to like hang out with some buddies. Do like a little project, a little side project. Everybody makes a hero. 4 monsters, hunters go off to like hunt a monster, and then you just play through like a cooperative, like fun couple games on a weekend. And I think that because you have this wonderful sort of like anywhere, anytime theme, you could skin it really fun. You could do a Halloween version, right, where you're hunting the monster from Jeepers Creepers. You could do the Thing episode, even with the minions and stuff like that. There's a bunch of different, I think, ways you can take this game. And it's free. Very well realized for a free itch game. So toss a coin to your Witcher and, toss Jose $5 if you pick it up. I think that'd be a great thing for everybody to do if you want like a nice free sort of Ranger style Monster Hunter game. So there it is. We did another one, another indie hour. We are done for the week, and we will be picking on Monday our next game to cover. So if you're seeing this on Wednesday, there might still be time to get it on the poll and put your thumb on the scale and get it changed. You can also suggest new games to cover if you're a GMG patron in the comments on each weekly poll. That's where we pull our new games from. Generally speaking, we're just better able to crowdsource when new things come out, when there's a couple hundred people. I think there's 500 GMG patrons, 540 or something like that, looking for games as opposed to just me, because I can't be everywhere all at once. And you never know what's going to come around the bend. Last week we had like a Annihilation style stalker game. This week we got Monster Hunters. There's always new stuff coming every week and something new for you guys to check out. So we're closing on 50. We should do something special for the 50th episode. I'm not sure what it'll be though, but we're 2 away. So thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GMG Indie Hour next week. Till then, I'm Ash.